Okay, there we go. Hi, I'm Trixie, aka the Thoughtful Beast. Welcome to my live show. Before we start, please look down at the bottom and consider donating to San Diego's local bail fund. Dee McClure, that's the link to their, oh my gosh, crowd fund. Oh, you know, one of those things.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
Crowd fund something campaign. It's one of those. That's what it is.
Right.
So please, consider donating. Remember that even though protests aren't still out there, like on the media, they're still happening in real life. I am here today with Dominic Lawson, and he is the host of, do you want to show? I'm going to read off your sweater. Show off your sweater. Show off the fanning. The Start Live podcast. That's for you, Fahara, wherever you are.
Right, exactly. Got to get that branding in there.
Got to get that branding. But before we do that, Dominic, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I just want to say once again, thank you so much for having me on your live stream. I'm truly honored. Once again, my name is Dominic Lawson. I'm the host of the Startup Life podcast. And we talk to entrepreneurs, the best business minds from around the world. And what we try to do is just help small business owners, try to help entrepreneurs on their journey, on their path. And so that's why we bring in some of the big time business leaders, sometimes newsmakers in business. We have sources all over the world. And so we're just really happy to kind of do that for small business owners and entrepreneurs and just people who are looking to kind of climb the corporate ladder. I'm born and raised in Memphis, Tennessee. That's kind of where I am right now. I went to school, spent some time in the Army, spent some time in corporate America. And me and my wife back in 2014, we just decided to start this educational consulting firm called Owls LLC. That's actually the parent company for the Startup Life. And what we do is write curriculum and do professional development with like teachers and school districts and nonprofits and corporations and stuff like that. And so I used to write this blog, if you will, kind of help business owner, because I've always had a passion for business. I was that kid in high school who would kind of explain certain business things to my teacher in business class from time to time. So yeah, I was that kid, the business nerd growing up. I've always been a fan of like CNBC and the Wall Street Journal and stuff like that. Yeah, pretty nerdy. I am a business nerd. Really, I really am. Which is honestly why I love doing the show. It allows me to kind of cool thing. Allows me to talk to some of my heroes in business. So that's kind of cool. Like one-on-one, have that FaceTime. I always say it's kind of like a nice scam to get an MBA and not have to pay for it. You know what I mean? So because seriously, I'm talking to the people that we will be reading about in textbooks anyway, right? So I get to talk to them one-on-one. But I wrote it. It started with this blog. And my wife would edit it. And so it was kind of taking a lot of time. So we kind of decided that, maybe you should do a podcast. It's quicker. You can edit it and stuff like that, get it out there. And honestly, people like to listen more than they like to read. So, let's just be honest, and so that was in 2016, November 1st of 2016, we launched the Startup Life podcast. Crazy thing. The first episode is like 30 minutes long. It took me like 6 hours to record that thing. Right. like honestly, like trying to like get their tone right, get the sound right, and everything. And so here we are now here coming up in August, we're going to be launching our 200th episode. So we're pretty excited about that. Thank you. Pretty excited about that. And the ride has just been pretty amazing. We'll probably get into that a little bit later, but the ride's been pretty amazing. And honestly, I'm just grateful for my audience, grateful for people like you to kind of share what I do and stuff like that. And it's been pretty fun. And so I'm looking to just kind of continue to keep doing this thing and just keep moving more up along those that chart list, because they do rankings and stuff like that. So I think the highest I charted in the United States on iTunes was 126. So that's an accomplishment for me. Yeah, I'm taking that. You know what I mean?
There's so many podcasts.
Absolutely, right?
So many podcasts
right. So many, right?
Yeah.
So but no, it's been a fun ride. And once again, thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Mm-hmm. I still have so many questions. So like, what is it about business that attracted you as a child?
I think it was honestly it was control. So and my good friend Fahar, you had him on the show and stuff like that. We come from very humble beginnings here in Memphis, Tennessee. You know what I mean? It doesn't exactly have the glitz and glam of Hollywood. It's not necessarily the hustle and bustle of New York. And so, like, we come from humble beginnings where everything you work for, you have to work your tail off for it. You know what I mean? And so I always saw business as like this really cool thing to where you can kind of, as one of my good friends say, own your means of production. You know what I mean? Where if you have this skill set, or if you have this hustle type of mindset, this entrepreneurial mindset that we like to talk about, you can make money. And so when you come from humble beginnings and you come up with not a whole lot of money, that's very appealing to you. You know what I mean? And so you would see people, on the CNBCs and the Wall Street journals talking about, certain things. And you pick up tidbits here and there. But honestly, I think that's how it started. It was just a way to kind of control, what you control and try to make money and stuff like that. I think my very first business venture was going to the neighborhood Family Dollar, buying pencils and then reselling them at school. Right. And so, that was kind of cool. And then and then when you grow up in Memphis, everybody has like a lawnmower business from a time to time. When you're like 12 years old, 13 years old, you got a lawnmower, you see somebody with a yard, there's $20 in your pocket just waiting for you to be had, you know what I mean? But that's honestly where it kind of started from.
That's really cool. Like that's just like a really cool mentality, and because basically you're just like, like, how can I take more control of my life? How can I make resources, opportunities for myself?
For sure. And honestly, a lot of people, tell you to kind of pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you know what I mean? And so, and so the cool thing is when you come from humble beginnings, there's no leather for bootstraps. So, but the cool thing is you get to create custom made bootstraps because you get to pick and choose what you want. You know what I mean? And so that's just one of those other aspects of business that I love, that like, once again, you get to kind of control your own destiny, control your own fate. And honestly, when you own your own means of production, there's not really nobody can kind of really come in and shut you down unless you're doing something illegal, of course. Right. But outside of that, you get to control your own destiny. And I think business allows you to do that.
Yeah, the ingenuity and then the integrity, right? Because like there's a million people who want to start a business, but then like understanding like, dude, that work is like hard.
Right.
Like and you have to be persistent.
You do.
Happen over time.
Right. You do. And the thing is, and a lot of people I talk to about business, and we're talking, even on the show, and they all share the same thing. It's like, it's what you become in the journey, not the goal, but what you become in the journey is just super important, because you learn perseverance, you learn how to overcome adversity, you know how to problem solve. Because honestly, that's all entrepreneurship is. It's solving a problem. I mean, honestly, the money is a byproduct of that, but honestly, you're just solving a problem. Hey, there are people who are out here hungry and they don't want to wait for a meal, or they don't want to go home and fix a meal because they're tired. Oh, there's fast food for that, or there's other aspects where you're solving a problem where it's saving people time, giving people peace of mind, or whatever the case may be. You're really just solving a problem. And honestly, no matter what business you think of, they're solving problems. And that's why they become lucrative, from your Netflixes to your Amazons, especially Amazon during these days. I can't, like, so many people are like buying stuff online because, social distancing and quarantine. And so, but Amazon solved a problem.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, like, Amazon hasn't even been around that long.
No.
It hasn't even been around that long. So it's crazy.
They fell into like a sweet spot, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially now. This is an awful sweet spot, but it is a sweet spot.
That's true.
People need things, and when things are closed, or like even like people are afraid, like,
right,
which is super understandable. It's just like you're like, I don't want to go out where people are. Like Amazon is like such a great alternative,
right?
And even pre-quarantine, it's just like a great alternative where it's like, oh, I can get this 2 days and never leave my house. Great.
Right. And that's why part of the reason why, even, Amazon has even increased in value over the past 3 months because of COVID-19, the coronavirus, whatever you want to call it. Excuse me. It's increased in value because it hit a sweet spot. Whether that's good, bad, or indifferent, it just simply is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's so interesting. With like Jeff Bezos,
right,
making so much money.
Yeah. His value has increased a couple of times over since then, which is kind of crazy because he just went through a divorce and stuff like that, and like half of it was kind of taken away in the divorce. But I don't think he's there yet, but he's just about made it back up over the course of these past couple of months. That's how bananas that is, and that's how it is in business. You know what I'm saying? You're solving a problem, you find a sweet spot, you stay on that sweet spot, you stay consistent, and then honestly, this is where he is. This is where he is. And that's why he's worth so much. And honestly, that's why Amazon is on his way to become the first $1 trillion company. It's bananas. Bananas.
It is bananas. And it's so intense. It's intense bananas.
Right.
Like,
and it's funny because you can buy bananas on Amazon.
Right. Okay, let's talk about your podcast a little bit. How do you feel coming up on your 200th episode?
It's crazy. It's bananas. Like I said, that first episode took me 6 hours to record. It's like 36 minutes on. And honestly, like that first episode, I was terrible. Right? Sometimes I go back and listen to it. It's like, man, you're not the same guy. But as I come up on 200 episodes, I've learned a lot. I've seen a lot. I've tried out a lot of things. And honestly, it's almost like, I found my thing. I found my thing, and so I know a lot of times we go through life trying to figure out what's my purpose, what is the meaning of life, and I think it's, that self-actualization piece for those who are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's that self-actualization piece. And so with podcasting and reaching this milestone of 200 episodes, it's amazing. And I think about where we started, and stuff like that. And it's just crazy. And the people we get to talk to, oh my goodness. Like just yesterday, I talked to the former CEO of Rue 21, which is just bananas. You know what I mean? Yeah. Or we've talked to the co-founder of Netflix, or we've talked to the founder of Paychex. Back in April, I talked to the chairman of JetBlue Airways on the show. Today, I launched 2 episodes, and one of those was the chief ethics officer of Airbnb. And so it's just amazing that, I get to talk to these people, people that, I look up to, that I admire, that I supremely respect. And I get to pick their brains. You know what I mean? Like I said, it's like getting an MBA without the student loans. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's crazy. But to get to this point, I never thought it would get to this point. You know what I mean? Because the thing is, like with podcasting, like most people don't make it past episode 12. By episode 12, people just kind of shut it down. You know what I mean? And so to make it to 200 is just wow. We pick up sponsors every once in a while on the show, which is kind of cool. It's always kind of cool to create something out of nothing, and people say, you know what, we like what you're doing, we're gonna pay you for it. Like that is just like amazing, right? But as I come up on the 200th episode, I'm already thinking about 300 episode 300, because because the thing is, we're booked with guests all the way out to March of 2021. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah. And we have right about we have about 53 episodes that we've recorded and haven't released. So there's 100 episodes in the pipeline, and that just comes from working and networking and building relationships. And it's funny because the first episode was recorded in my closet, and episode 200 is still going to be recorded in my closet. You know what I mean? Even though we've talked to these amazing people, we're syndicated on multiple radio stations around the country, including London. And actually, we're going to start on Fahara's radio station tomorrow, Main Event 901 Radio there in San Diego. So we're excited about that. But but even with all that, we still record in the closet. So imagine me talking to the CEO of Netflix in my, and I'm like recording in this, next to my suits and my shirts and stuff, like next to my face. You know what I mean? So it's just a wild ride. I think the most important thing I'm appreciative of is the audience. I wouldn't be here without them. I tell Startup Nation all the time that this isn't my show. Sure, I pay for the server, I find the guests, and I do all the work and this, that, and the other, but it's their show, because the thing is, I do this for them, because especially with COVID-19 and this pandemic, there's a lot of small businesses that aren't doing so well. There's a lot of small businesses that unfortunately had to close. And so if I can be a beacon of hope, not just a beacon of hope, but if I can give them tangible advice that they can use, like, you know what, maybe it's not so bad. And maybe I can get through this day, and stuff like that. And back it up with, like I said, with some of the best business minds who have ever done it from around the world, that makes all this worthwhile, makes all of it worthwhile.
Yeah, exactly. Which is because that's your purpose. I mean, that's the part that gives you purpose. Like, you
Absolutely.
can do things for funsies, but you
Right.
you have people, who really appreciate and need the knowledge,
Right.
and the resource, the access to that information, which is great.
And they're looking for it, right? The thing is, like, we've never had anybody say anything bad about the show. Everybody, we have all 5 stars on Apple iTunes, Apple Podcasts or whatever, which is like phenomenal. You know what I mean? And so, and the thing is, like, the guest list just keeps getting crazier and crazier. We're actually going to have, we partnered with a PR firm in LA, and we're going to have Nick Walinda, the very famous acrobatic artist. He's going to come on the show in September to kind of share some thoughts in his new book and stuff like that. And so now we're starting to peer into, not just talking to business leaders, we're starting to peer into Hollywood a little bit. So that's kind of cool. You know what I mean? And so, but at the end of the day, I do this for Startup Nation. I do this for all those small business owners that say, you know what, I got this idea, but I need a little bit of help. We're the little help that we're looking for. Yeah,
because business is hard, and a lot of what you said with wanting control, over your career and stuff,
right?
Because working for other people can just suck.
It can.
Or it just might not give you the flexibility you need in your life.
Right. And that's why we say we're a show for not just entrepreneurs and career-minded professionals, because the thing is, there's some people who don't want to start a business or whatever, right? But we still bring on people who are great career coaches, great leadership coaches, right? And honestly, believe a lot of that stuff, it works either way. It works in a business, it works in your career. And we don't try to shun away people who work like a traditional 9-to-5 job. There's a lot of podcasts out there and people out there like that who kind of shame people because they don't have a business. And I don't think that's really cool, because I think if your purpose is a business, or if your purpose is doing this thing and it just so happens to be the 9-to-5, I think you should pursue that. And so we try to be an ally for both of those people. But like you said, business is definitely hard. Well, in the sense of it's like the concepts are very easy. Business concepts are very easy. It's the execution part. It's the getting over the adversity. It's the being told no 50 times before the 51st time you get maybe, and then you'll get a yes, right? You know what I mean? It's honestly, it really comes down to mental toughness. Yeah. It really comes down to mental toughness and being and kind of psyching your mind out to say, you know what, no is an acronym for next opportunity. You know what I mean? Not necessarily, no in the traditional sense.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. No is an acronym for next opportunity. And so we try to next opportunity, because that opportunity clearly wasn't for you, or it wasn't for you at that moment. And so we try to share that with Startup Nation. Like, look, there's going to be other opportunities. As the more you move forward, the more you network, the more you try your best to try to pursue this thing, it's waiting for you. Because the thing, I believe this. I 100% believe this. If you ask the universe for something, the universe is going to answer it. The universe is just going to answer. Now, granted, in the beginning, the universe is looking back and is like, you know what? okay, I see they're starting this thing. I'm not going to step in just yet. Let's just see how they navigate these waters. Let's just see how they move forward, right? And then after a while, you're still moving forward. Like the universe is like, oh, they're still doing this thing. All right, let me throw them a bone here. Let me see what they do with that. And then you take advantage of the bone the universe throws with you, and you keep going and you keep going. The universe is like, oh, okay. Now, many people would have stopped at this moment. Let me give them a bigger bone, right? And so you take that opportunity, you move forward, and then after a while, you're like, you know what? Let's open the floodgates, because clearly he is about this life. He is about that startup life. And so we're just going to move forward, and we're just going to bring them this plethora of opportunity. And that's where it comes with, and we talked about this a little bit off air, where when you start making money, it starts getting easier. It's funny, like that first couple of dollars is the hardest one, but as you figure it out, it becomes easier. Why? Because what you become in the process is more important than the ultimate goal. And so business teaches you that. Life kind of teaches you that. And so, and the crazy thing is, a lot of times that those lessons you learn in business kind of filter over in life, where if you find yourself having a day where you're struggling, right? That mental fortitude, that mental toughness definitely comes in hand in other parts and other facets of your life. And so, I that's why I guess that's just why I love business. It's just that mental fortitude, that mental toughness. It is hard, but with a little bit of, that toughness, you can succeed. It's just waiting for you. Because the thing is that, like, a lot of times, outside of a global pandemic, of course, under normal circumstances, it really is up to you if something doesn't succeed or not. It really is, right? Like, there's nobody coming in to stop you, unless it's illegal, of course. There's nobody coming in to stop you or anything like that. But, just keep moving forward and you got it.
I love how you keep disclaimer.
Right.
Unless it's illegal.
I just want to be clear about that.
Let's be clear. No, it's good. Yeah, it's really interesting, because, like, I think sometimes people get really discouraged with, like, success, like, quote unquote success, and what is that? And, like, what are you trying to achieve? And when you leave success like a super broad term, or the term that just means making a butt ton of money, then it's really easy to get discouraged. But the thing, like what you said, if you keep going and you keep working, you will have success. And it's really important to recognize, like, those quote unquote little things of success, right? Like, even when someone is just like, hey, I saw that you're doing your podcast, great, like, that looks awesome, like, that's a success. You got someone to, like, people know that you have a thing.
Absolutely.
Like, step one, and that's like a big step one.
It's a huge step, because the thing is, believe it or not, most people won't even make that first step. So right there, that's a victory, right? That's a victory in itself. You know what I mean? Or when somebody say, hey, I like what you're doing, that's another victory. And sometimes those small victories, not only do they lead to big victories, but in the interim, those small victories will buy you some time. Because, like, if somebody say, hey, I love the Thoughtful Beast, and you were struggling that day, maybe that nice comment buys you 2 days. Of, like, maybe it buys you 2 days. Or if somebody else, shares your episode, that may buy you a week. You know what I mean? And so it really is like, an inch by inch game. And this doesn't just apply to business. It applies to whatever you're pursuing. I know with you and your beautiful dance pieces that you do and stuff like that, we're all pursuing this thing, right? And so when you have somebody that just says, you know what, that's pretty cool, right? And when you're a content creator, you live with that, you love that, you know what I mean? And honestly, I believe everybody should pursue their dream. I really, honestly, truly do. And honestly, the reason I say that is because I think if you don't pursue your dream, you're being selfish. I believe that, because we've all been given these God-given abilities to do something, whether that be cut grass, whether that be interior design, whether that be podcasting or dance. You've been given this dream, and maybe you don't know what that is just yet. And which is why you got to try some stuff here and try some stuff there. But eventually, you're going to figure out what that thing is. And once you figure out what that thing is, you must pursue it with reckless abandon. If you don't pursue it, I'm serious. I
haven't heard that term in a long time.
Pursue it with reckless abandon, because the thing is, is that like it's been that dream, that gift, whatever has been given to you to pursue. And when you don't pursue it, you're being selfish, not only to yourself, you're being selfish to your family because they've invested love and time into you. You're being selfish to your friends because they invested love and time with you. And honestly, you're being selfish to the world because the world needs to see what it is that you have to offer it. So if you keep that from the world, you're being selfish. And so that's what I tell people when they ask me about, fear and stuff like that. Like, you're not fearful, you're selfish. That's what you do. That's what you are. You're selfish. And so you got to pursue that thing.
That's such an interesting way of thinking about it. Because when I think of people not pursuing their dreams, I just think of like the mental repercussions that come with that.
Right.
There are a lot of people with a lot of regrets. And I'm not saying I know a lot of people are like, no regrets. I'm not that person. I'm like, I have many regrets. Like, let's just be honest. Like, I have many regrets. I wish I did. I've hurt people in the past before. Like, I regret that. Like, I regret that, but like when you're not following your passion and your dreams, that like weighs on you, man. Like weighs on like your soul.
It does.
It's like soul crushing to not do something, especially when you're good at something and like your passion is into it. You're really good at something. You're really good at it. It like, even if you're not good at it, but like it like invades your mind and you're like, this is what I want to live in.
Exactly.
Like, shut that off. Like that just has repercussions to it. Like there's going to be adverse side effects to that.
And I'm 100% in agreement with you because the thing is like my favorite is, to your point, my favorite is when you see that person who is not as talented as you are, but they're having this massive success. Like, wait a minute, I know I can do it better than that person. And another thing I tell people all the time is that, like, look, you need to define success on your terms. Not what I say it is, not what you say it is, not with your family, not with your in-laws or your whoever. You define what that success looks like. If that success is just, being on stage one time, then that is your success. If that success is whatever it is, you get to define that success. Nobody else can define that for you. And honestly, and one of the things we talked to Startup Nation about on our show on the Startup Life is that, like, look, I know we're in business to make money. That is the mechanism of business. That's just, it is what it is. But just know that the money always comes last. That's just part of the process. It's supposed to come last. You got to go through the trash. You got to go through the mud. You got to go through the sticker bushes. You got to go through the barbed wire. You got to go through the dog over on the other side of the fence. You got to go through the boss saying, that's a stupid idea. You got to go through your family saying that's a stupid idea. You got to go through all of that. But eventually, you start to get traction and you start to get whatever. And then eventually the money will come. Because I know a lot of people that say, I just don't want to work anymore. I want to make a lot of money. That's fine. I have no issue with that. But just know those things, they come on the back end. We got to do some work first. Because see, the problem is, like, a lot of times they want idea, video montage, millions and boats and yachts and stuff like that. That's not how any of this works. And that's not just a business. That's like pursuing your dream. Like you got to go through that video montage in real time. You know what I mean? You got to.
Yes. Oh my God. If only you could just be like, let me play my favorite song and just do a montage of me getting better.
Yeah, just play one of those 80s music from the Breakfast Club or something. Just have that as your video montage, and then like yachts and boats. I wish it was that easy, but it's not. But the thing is, if it was that easy, you wouldn't appreciate the end goal. You just wouldn't. And and which means that if you were to lose it, you have no idea how to get it back, because you fast forwarded yourself into a time where you wasn't ready and prepared for. So that's why we always say, you got to go through that process. What you become in the journey is more important than the goal.
Yeah, like I always think about because money's going to come last. Like it is. And like there always has to be, like you were saying, businesses started because someone came up to us with a solution to a problem. Right. They wanted to help is a lot of like how you hear people like, I want to do a startup because I want to help these people who aren't helped. Like there's an industry for this, but not for this. Like, I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but they want to fill in that need. Right. And so for me, I know it's very much like I can keep going because right now I know like right now, success for me is me feeling like I'm actually helping people,
right,
you know, and learning like
right,
that. Like for me right now, like that's the thing that I'm like, yes, that keeps me motivated right now, because I know like these things are happening. You know, this is going to help me get to the part where I'm able to make money.
right.
And for other people can just be like, some people are competitive. I am not competitive. You know, some people like, it's true though. Like, you know, some people like to win. Yeah, there you go. Like, and winning doesn't necessarily mean money. Winning could be like, oh, I overcame this obstacle. Like I figured this out. I figured out this freaking coding software.
Right.
It was awful. Like win, you know? And like, that's like a great thing too, because I do feel like with anything, like, you know, we all need to make money, and money is important.
Right.
Like money is important. Like, sorry, we're not like Star Trek, you know, where like everyone can do like what they can do and it's fine.
Right.
We're not there yet. So, you know, money is really important, but there just also has to be something else.
It's got to be.
That keeps you going. Whether
it's got to be
the real want to help, or like the real like being like, yeah, dude, like I'm going to freaking conquer this. Like I'm going to like up, and like that's what keeps you going, because like all of that is great.
I give you a fantastic story really quickly. So there was a point where, you know, and a lot of people who create content, they all feel this. It's called like content fade, pod fade, where you just get burned out a little bit, right? And so I got burned out a little bit, and so I took a bit of a break, right? And so I met one of my good friends who listens to the show often, and we was at a famous restaurant spot. I won't say what it is because they didn't pay for this spot, but you know, but you know, I saw him. He's like, "Hey man, what you been doing?" I was like, "I've been doing good. You good?" Like, "Yeah, we're good. We're good." It's like, "Hey man, I haven't heard a new episode of Startup Life yet. You know, are you putting it down?" Like, "Yeah, I'm just taking a break." It's like, "Man, look, man, I just want you to know it helps me. I listen to the show. I love the show, and I can't wait for you to put out new episodes." Like, man, you say stuff that is just like, you know what, man, you really got me through some days. You got me through some times, right? And it was at that moment where you realize that, like, look, there are people out here. After a while, you know, it's almost like when you create content, and you create content that's purposeful, or even if it's just like, you know, and purposeful doesn't have to mean like, you know, helping small business owners. Purposeful could be like, you know, giving them a good laugh, like YouTubers or wherever the case may be. That's purposeful, right? Mm-hmm. But when you create content, you almost kind of create a social contract with your audience, right? Because the thing is, they're going to look for you. You're providing them with something, whether that be an escape, whether that be with information, whether that be just to entertain them. And so when he told me that, like, man, I really love your show, that's when I was like, I got to get back in the studio. I got to, because now it's bigger than me now. You know, even if it was only like 5 people listening to it, those 5 people should get the absolute best content that can possibly give them, because they're looking for, you're helping people. Yeah. You know, and so when you talk about it being besides the money, that's where you lean on. And one of the things we tell Startup Nation all the time, when you're hitting those days where the cash register isn't ringing, you better love what you're doing, because that's why a lot of people quit what they're doing, because like they weren't in it for the right reasons. Right. They weren't in it for organic reasons. Like, I just don't want to do this anymore. One of my mentors always tell me that you need to be mindful of what you're running to and not what you're running away from. You know what I mean? Like, that's super important, because if you're just running away from something, you're going to quit. But if you're running towards something, you're running towards this thing, that's going to get you through the rough days. That's going to get you through the rough patches. And that's a philosophy I definitely live by.
Yeah. I would love to talk about burnout for a little bit while you're
here,
just because that is something, obviously, like, especially like a lot of people are facing like burnout now, which is like Zoom burnout or just like burnout in general, because it's really strange, because it's like quarantine time,
right?
And it feels like you're either burned out because you feel like you're doing nothing, but like but you're just trying to stay, you know, you're trying to stay healthy, you're trying to stay well,
or stay sane.
You stay sane, and like you can burn out from that, because it's just like you're trying really hard just to stay okay. And then there's the burnout of like, you know, like using Zoom, or how to like use the internet, like, you know, like like really, I mean, like really utilize the internet and all
Right.
like the things like it was made for and can do now because technology has just gotten like room.
Of course.
And the thing is like, because learning so much at one time and having to learn Zoom and stuff, like people get burned out because we're literally just having to adapt to so many things. That means you're having to learn so many things at once.
Right. And the thing is, like stuff like Zoom, that was never meant to be used as much as it's being used right now. That was never the intent. You know what I mean?
No.
But I definitely understand what you're talking about, because I think as the world has slowed down, and even though they're trying to ramp things back up and stuff like that, but for the most part, the world has slowed down, and so it's kind of have a lot of us in our head a lot. You know what I mean? We're thinking about stuff. We're thinking about stuff that we haven't thought about in a long time. We're recollecting on things. Some of us are trying to reconnect with family. Some of us are trying to reconnect with friends, or wherever the case may be. And I think it's first and foremost, it's important to acknowledge the burnout. Like, it's okay to say, I feel overwhelmed, or I feel burnt out, or I feel whatever. Because, and I know that's the premise of the Thoughtful Beast, is like, attacking and really acknowledging where we are on our mental health spectrum. You know what I mean? And that's like super important. I think a lot of people are, maybe they're kind of turned that corner now, but I know in the beginning we're not used to that. We're not used to just everything slowing down. We're not just used to just sitting and just thinking about things. You know what I mean? And so, no, I definitely feel it. We went through some of that here as a family, but I think it's just important to have those conversations and just and have those talks. I know for me, it's me and my 8-year-old kind of reconnecting. Because a lot of times I'm working. And that's what I did at the beginning of the pandemic. I was just like, I'm just going to drown myself in work. And I got to the point where, like, that's not a good idea. You know what I mean? Because it got to a point where my 8-year-old's like, hey, daddy, can I just sit and record with you? Like, why do you want to record? This is boring. He's like, well, you're always doing this, and I just want to hang out with you. And I was like, oh, man. All right. So we stopped everything we was doing. We went outside and blew bubbles. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you just got to go outside and blow bubbles, because it really is that simple. There are more important. I know we talk about business and money and startup life and all this other stuff. There's stuff way more important than any of this. More important than Zoom, way more important than money, more important than all this stuff. And so I know for me, it's my family. And so, but no, that burnout is real. And I think it's just important to acknowledge that burnout, talk to somebody about that burnout, and then really be intentional and really engage on, how to pursue not having that feeling anymore. Because it's not the greatest feeling. I mean, you need to go through it, but it's not the greatest feeling. But, people need to acknowledge it and talk about it.
Ooh, and how do you, what advice do you give around burnout for people, like, obviously, like doing startup, because like I know a lot of my friends in San Diego, there's startups here, different businesses, biotech, other things.
Right.
And, startups are hard.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work,
is.
especially, like when you really first start, because you're just trying to get someone to fund your stuff.
Yeah.
What advice do you give to small businesses like that?
I think the first piece of advice I get is take account of what's in your network. If you have some people who are willing to invest, like, maybe you have a venture capitalist in your network, or maybe you don't. Maybe you have maybe some friends and family who can invest. Maybe you don't. I think the important thing is you don't have to have the entire castle all in 5 minutes. And I think a lot of times startups feel like, oh, I got to have $10 million. Do you? Do you need $10 million to start up? Or can you build relationships, build a prototype? Because the thing is, people are willing to invest money in prototypes these days. You don't necessarily have to have like a finished product. Now, there are some instances where, it's important to have a finished product, but a lot of times you don't. Mark Randolph, talks about this, the co-founder of Netflix, when we talked or whatever. He talked about in 1997, it took him 6 months to build a website for Netflix, right? And now in this days, if he built Netflix in 2020, it would take him a weekend. You know what I mean? So a lot of times, you can have something where you can have a prototype, if there's a proof of concept already, that's great. But if you don't, build the network, make sure you create a process for building that network, because honestly, that's where you focus your time when you trying to build a startup, is building that network. And honestly, just slowly build. You don't have to. Another thing startups don't, that I highly suggest that you don't do. You don't need an office space when you first start. You don't need the cushy ping pong table. You don't need all this auxiliary fancy stuff. I think a lot of times and that's why a lot of startups run out of money really quickly. I always say that the revenue should justify the action, not the action justify the revenue. Meaning that once you get to a point where it's time to have an office, get an office. Once it's time to have a top of the line, let's just say you're making t-shirts, like one of those, those $10,000 printers or whatever. Maybe you need the screen like that with that flat press. I don't even know what it's called, right? Screen print. I think is what. Where you move the thing back and forth. Maybe you need to start with that first before you get the $10,000 printer. I think we fall victim a lot of times when we see Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey with Twitter and Square. We see them like, oh man, I got to scale fast. And if I'm not a billionaire by 30, I'm a failure. That's just absurd. That is just completely absurd. And so, and the thing is, they don't realize like Zuckerberg and Dorsey are the exception. They're not the rule, right? Case in point, Colonel Sanders, KFC. He didn't start KFC till he was 65 years old, right? And he ended up, he died, and 20 years later, a multimillionaire. So you have to get out of this idea that you have to be this instant success overnight. Don't fall trapped to the Instagram. Don't fall trapped to social media saying like, if you're not a billionaire by 30, you're a failure. That is absurd. Take the time, make sure the revenue justifies the actions. Make sure, if you get an office space, get used office furniture. You don't need to have the top of the line massage chair that's leather and and it dispenses water out of the armrest. You don't need all of that. You know what I'm saying? You like bootstrap that thing. Start small, but that's some of the advice I would give startups. Like just start small, be humble, and slowly and gradually build your company. Because honestly, those are the companies that are most successful, not the ones that pop overnight and become billion-dollar companies overnight. It's the ones that slowly and methodically slowly build. Those are the ones that stand the test of time. That's how Amazon did it. That's how IBM did it. That's how Netflix did it. Like name any successful company. They all started small. Apple started in the garage.
Yeah, I was just
in a garage. You know what I mean? So it's like start small, slowly build. Slow and steady wins the race. I know that's cliche. I know it's from a famous storybook, The Tortoise and the Hare. But cliches are cliches because they are true. Start small, slow and steady wins the race. It just is. And everybody on Wall Street will tell you that.
Yeah. Ooh, we're gonna talk about like social media and stuff more, because that's just like you're like, don't fall into that trap. And I'm like, ooh,
right.
But it's such a big trap.
Oh, it is.
So I would love to discuss that, especially because I know a lot of people watch, like everyone has a social media account now.
Right.
And like that's like the joke / truth.
Mm-hmm.
Like the joke / truth.
Right.
Everyone has an account and everyone's like trying to brand themselves.
Right. Absolutely.
And then we also know, we all constantly also remind each other, like, you're looking at everyone's highlights, and you don't even know like what's happening like behind the scenes.
Big
like,
facts.
You don't even know if this is like an actual highlight or they're just making a real pretty picture and it looks like a highlight.
Right.
So there's so many things to ask, but like, what should I ask?
I just really quickly to the highlight thing. I just think we have to remind ourselves like social media is a tool. It's a tool to either help you to build a company or just like get, your thoughts and your ideas out there. Maybe, like with Instagram, you just want to take picture of a nice burger you had. You know what I mean? Like it's a tool. And so we can't fall victim to, like you said, the highlight. You put it perfectly. Those are highlights. You know what I mean? It's like watching ESPN and Sports Center. You're watching highlights. That's not the whole game. You're not watching when the guy tumbled over in the first row of the bleachers. You're not watching where somebody fouled out, because that's not sexy. That's not fun. But honestly, those are the things that build character. Those are the things that, that actually tell the complete story. So you can't fall victim to those highlights of social media. And honestly, and I'm just gonna be honest here, a lot of times when people put those highlights out there, some of them are dealing with some stuff. And so they're dealing with some mental stuff. Not all of them, but a lot of people are. I mean, just today, Megan Thee Stallion, the rapper, had like this moment on Instagram where she was just like, I'm going through some stuff. You know what I mean? And she's like this very talented, very successful hip hop artist, right? And even she's saying, I'm going through some stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's the real Megan. It's not the one who's like on the red carpets, who's on, social media, and stuff like that. I mean, that's her too. But the real Megan is the one that says like, you know what? I miss my mom. And I never really got over that. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so, and bravo to her to be that courageous and transparent on social media, because not everybody's willing to do that. You know what I mean?
No, especially like with her notoriety.
Exactly.
Like, that can come back to bite her, which it shouldn't, but it does sometimes.
It absolutely should not. If anything, it should get her more fans, because because I think the best celebrities, or whatever the case may be, they have that sense of relatability, right? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people who have parents that are no longer with them and stuff like that, and they never really got over that. They've never talked to anybody about that, and so they kind of thrust themselves into some venture or some whatever. And so kudos to her for sure. But yeah, like social media, you have to put it in context. You have to put it in perspective, right? A lot of times that's not the whole story. Matter of fact, 99% of the time that ain't the whole story. So
how do you feel about because social media is a thing now, or I guess, what do you think about small businesses or startups using social media? And what are the things that, I guess now I'm just like, no, I'm asking for tips. Like, what are the things that you think, missteps that people sometimes do as small businesses using Instagram? Yeah. Or other social media platforms?
Great question. I think the biggest thing that small business and startups, kind of like drop the ball on social media is they don't ask. They don't ask for the ask, right? Basically what I mean is there's no call to action. It's like, look at me. I'm doing this wonderful thing. I have this widget, or I'm selling these bracelets, or I'm selling these t-shirts, right? And they're amazing products. Like, especially on Instagram and Twitter or Facebook or, TikTok now, because I know that's kind of a rising thing and stuff like that. But I think they get so caught up into, showing what the wares are, but they forget to say, go to my website to purchase, go to here to purchase, go here to follow. So I think that's the biggest thing I see, is like missing that call to action, telling the audience what you want them to do. And it's not from an authoritative standpoint, because the thing is that that's what you're there to do. Social media is a tool. And honestly, if you're not using social media, even though it's number 2 behind word of mouth, or as far as like success in advertising, if you're not using social media in 2020, you're going to have a hard pressed time getting out there, depending on what you do, right? But for a lot of people who, if you're not on social media, I would encourage you to get on some type of social media, even if it's just one. I know a lot of people say, you gotta be on Twitter, gotta be on Instagram, gotta be on Facebook, gotta be on TikTok, gotta be on Snapchat, gotta be on all this stuff. Look, if you just want to pick one platform and just knock that one platform out of the park, do that. That's okay. I think you should have some type of presence on social media, or at the very least, create a social media account. So that way, if you need the social media account later on down the road, you already have that name locked in. Because what you don't want to have happen is like, oh, I got to get on social media, but you waited 2 years ago, and now the perfect name that you wanted, the perfect screen name you wanted, is now gone because you didn't lock in that name. You know what I mean? So that's super important. But like, if you're a startup and you're not on social media, I would highly suggest that you change that course of action.
Yeah, like social media is interesting. Like it's a marketing tool, but also it's just like that's how people communicate now, especially like younger generations, millennials and Zoomers. Like this is our form of communication.
That is true.
Like,
that
and
is
you
true.
have to like recognize that, like not even just for marketing, but just understanding this is a new means of communication.
Absolutely. And go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I was just gonna say, and it's really effective.
It's very effective. I mean, we're thinking about Wendy's. And calling people out, like how funny is that marketing campaign, right? Like, and stuff like that. But honestly, that is how brands and big brands communicate with people, and honestly, that's one of the ways that now, 20 years ago, you couldn't get that type of instant feedback about a product, right? You can literally on social media do a focus group instantaneously. Right.
Yeah.
You can like, if you're not sure how a product is going to work out or how it's going to work in the marketplace, you can put that thing on social media and say, hey, what do you guys think about this? And you get instantaneous feedback. That's a lot more efficient than going to a mall with a clipboard and asking people questions. You know what I mean? Especially now with COVID, because social distancing, social distancing.
What do you think about this, man?
Right, exactly.
Let's stay over there.
Exactly. But no, you get to have that instantaneous feedback, and that is valuable. That is super valuable for a startup, for a small business, and stuff like that. And so I once again, if you're not on social media, I would highly advise you to get on social media. But also, really quickly, make sure you pick, if you're going to pick one social media, pick the right one for you. Is what you're doing for Facebook audience? Is it for a TikTok audience? Is it for a Twitter audience? Because the thing is, like, honestly, picking the right social media matters. Because if you're selling, I don't know, something for the demographic of between 45 and 64, you may not want to be on TikTok. Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe you want to be on Facebook where the old people are, right? I don't know. But but you want to do that feedback, So I would say, if you're not going to use all the social medias, at the very least, get on all social medias, create that username, that tagger or whatever, so that way you have that locked in. So that way, when you need to go back to it 2 years from now, you'll still have that tag and you can still use that profile.
Yes. It is really annoying not to be able to have the handle you want.
Right. No, I know. That's why on Twitter we're the Startup Life 1 and not the Startup Life. So that's because
that's why I had to be like thoughtful tricks, because there's this person who hasn't used their freaking like profile in like years. But
right.
They just have it. They just have the thoughtful piece of like, no.
Isn't that the worst? Like, they haven't used that profile in years and it's just sitting there, not being used. I was like, I need it. Yeah. You know what? That might be a business idea. That might be a business idea where you broker, to where you find people who need those profiles and you just reach out to them, and for like a finder's fee, you negotiate a sale of that profile. I don't know. I just thought about that off the top of my head.
Dude, people will pay for that.
I believe people might. I don't know. I feel like they might.
Especially, because you'll never know, because it's like at some point it's just like you'll never know what becomes famous or who becomes famous, and then you're just like, give me your Twitter handle.
Right. I know people do that. People do that with website domains. So I don't
exactly. So I don't see why
I don't see why you couldn't do it with with a Twitter or somebody's Facebook profile. So yeah.
Oh my God, time has gone by so quickly. Holy crap, that went really, really fast. It always goes by really fast.
We must be having some fun then.
It is fun, and it's so interesting. Even starting with your like, I've always been interested in business. Like, this is such a strange thing.
I am a business nerd.
It's cool though. It's really cool.
I appreciate that.
What should I ask you since we're ending? So many things I want to ask. I'm so curious now, but let's come to an end. Okay, let's say top 3 pieces of advice for a person starting a small business in quarantine.
Excellent question. The first thing you want to do is, once again, establish who your network is, right? Because you're going to need resources. Thing is about business, I know a lot of times we say, I built that or I did this by myself. Nobody builds a successful company by themselves. And if they tell you that they build a successful company by themselves, they are lying through their teeth. Okay. Even if you go and like build a website, you still needed the website server to build the website. So, I mean, you don't build it by yourself. But the first thing I would tell them is to find a network, get resources from your network and stuff like that. The second thing I would tell them is to don't be afraid to learn, right? Because the thing is, while we're in quarantine, while we're social distancing, the economy is a bit of a standstill. If there was ever a time to do some learning, do some sharpening of the saw, it's now. So that way, once the economy starts to reinvigorate and starts to move again, you're hitting the ground running because you took the time in the middle of a stall to accumulate all this information, all this access, and YouTube University, podcasts like the Startup Life. There's so many avenues to get all of this different information. And number 3, and the most important thing is, make sure that you define what your success is and you define that alone, right? Because that's super important. Because what I don't want people to think is they're like, oh, if I haven't made $10,000 in the first month, I'm a failure. No, you just haven't given it enough time. One of the things I tell people all the time, especially when they want to start a podcast, like, Dominic, I need to get more downloads. I need to get more subscribers. Like, look, if your show's good, your show's good. If one person likes your show, or if one person likes your company, or if one person likes your product, there's 50,000 people that's going to like it too. You just haven't found them yet. So you got to give them time to find you and you find them. But I'll give an extra bonus piece of advice. When you're in quarantine, do not let other people dictate your time. That's super important. Like, I know we don't want to say, we don't want to be the bad guy. We don't want to say no and stuff like that. But you cannot let people dictate your time, because even in quarantine or not in quarantine, people say, hey, oh, you work from home. Go pick up the laundry for me. Go do this errand for me. I mean, you're working from home. I mean, you got time to do it, right? No, I'm working from home, so, but no, be mindful of your network. Make sure you don't let people dictate your time. Make sure slow and steady wins the race, and you'll be fine. But the thing is, for those who want to start a company during a quarantine, it's a perfect time. It's a perfect time. If I could just say that, I guess that's a 5th piece of advice. It's a perfect time to start a company. I've talked to the CEO of Honeywell, $1 billion company. He built the company from $20 billion to $120 billion during the economic recession in 2008, 2009. He, the Netflix co-founder, all of these people that I've talked to, they say, even the guy yesterday from the former CEO of Route 21, they all say this is a perfect time to start a company. So many opportunities are found within chaos, because the thing is, what's happening is everybody's scrambling. Everybody's like all over the place, and you slow and steady, being mindful, being in the moment, not panicking, just kind of being a calm in the storm. You can find opportunities in this marketplace. Matt, we just talked about one just now about those usernames for like that's an opportunity.
Do it, because I don't want to do it. Someone else do it though.
That's an opportunity. That's an opportunity. And honestly, you can start a company for absolutely free. You can. The thing is, like, prime example, if you want to sell t-shirts, number 1, get your printful.com account. Number 2, get your PayPal account. Both of those things are free. Number 3, you can go and put like all different types of like designs on a t-shirt from like those picture stock companies, those websites, stuff like that. Put all types of designs on it and stuff like that. Ecwid, the first equit.com that allows you to have the first few of your the first 10 products on the website is free. You can sell those things. And so all those things with certain caveats are absolutely free. And you can start a company absolutely free. That's the beauty of capitalism and stuff like that. But I know I gave you more than 3. I do apologize.
I like it. I like it.
I tend to do that from time to time because I want people to be successful. I want people to have the ability, if they so choose to do so, to define what success is on their terms and ultimately pursue what they want to pursue. But if you want to start a company during a quarantine, it's super easy. Make sure you subscribe to the Startup Life podcast because we give ideas on this all the time. Shameless plug. And honestly, don't be fearful. Don't be fearful. There are tons of opportunity in chaos. You just got to find what that opportunity is, solve that problem, and you can be successful, be a successful business owner.
Yay. And I just want to point out, none of what Dominic said was make sure you buy space. Buy space now. You got to look nice and have these super fancy clothes. You got to get investors to give you thousands of dollars. I just want to note that you didn't say anything about that. You didn't. And I want to point it out because I think a lot of people get afraid of starting a business because they think, they need $20,000 to start.
A fantastic book to read on that very notion. Damon John's The Power of Broke. Because the thing is, when you don't have any money, that's where the ideas start to flow. When you're backed up against a corner, that's when that's when that entrepreneurial mindset, that problem solving mindset really starts to take hold. Because the thing is, you don't have any money. Mm-hmm. So you have the only way you can figure this out is with your ideas and being problem solving and being an analytical thinker and stuff like that. The Power of Broke by Damon John is an excellent book that talks about that.
Yay! I'm gonna look it up. Well, thank you so much for being here. This was super fun. It went by really quick. Usually these go by quick, but this one went extremely quick for me. I was wow, we're already there. It was 55 minutes. I was like, crap. No, this is really fun. And I love hearing about your podcast. And I love hearing all your different ideas about business. And again, I love how, everything you've said, anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. If you have an idea, dude. If you have an idea,
well, as we say on every show, if you have an idea, be about that life, the startup life. If you have an idea, just pursue it. And to your point, and I know we're trying to wrap it up here, but the thing is, honestly, Warren Buffett, one of the famous business owners, famous investors, he said, any successful company your Indian brother can run. So if that is true, if you have some smarts and you can problem solve, you can start a company too.
Yes, I like that. I like that. That's so thank you for being here. All the knowledge was so good. And again, thanks. I was 3 things. It's let's talk about 8. So it's good and I love it. Because really, and I feel this is more important now than ever. Knowledge really is power.
Right.
That's part of the control thing that we talked about in the beginning. Do you maybe have to control over your life, power over your life?
Absolutely.
And without that, it just becomes really hopeless.
For sure.
To be real, it becomes really hopeless. And I feel
facts.
Yeah, and right now we really need hope.
Absolutely. And I just, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I do want to go ahead. I just want to say thank you so much for having me on your live stream. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I wish you much success on your journey and everything with your live stream, with your dancing, and everything you decide to pursue. I am so in awe of what you do with the Thoughtful Beast, and I'm truly a fan. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Everyone, please check out the show. It's coming up. When is the 200th episode released?
It's going to be in August sometime. I haven't given a release date just yet because I don't know when I want to release it. It will be in August, though. We just we released today 192 and 193, so it's going to be fairly soon.
Yes. And so if you're in quarantine, you got some time, you want to start a business, start listening to this podcast, it won't run out. One of the things I hate, again, this story doesn't need to be told, but I'm telling it anyways. I'm super sick and tired of starting Netflix shows that just have one season. And I'm I'm gonna have to wait 2 years because we're in quarantine. So it's great to have your podcast. Again, you're coming at 200 episodes, so you guys are not going to run out of advice. It's basically what's happening. There's going to be more information for you.
Right.
Thank you, Dominic, for being here. It's been so great.
Thank you
To everyone who's been watching and who will be watching a recording of this, thank you for being here and listening, opening your mind to different things, particularly business today. If you are able to, please consider donating to GD McClure's SD bailout. The link is rolling down there. It's San Diego's local bailout, and I'm all about supporting your own community.
Absolutely.
If you're not from our community, please still consider anyway. Tomorrow I will have Molly Glenn, who's executive director of Malashok, which is one of the biggest dance companies in San Diego. She's here as part of my new, I don't know what to say it, like a new segment, I guess. I'll call it a segment, even though it's not a segment, addressing racism in our local San Diego dance community, because that's something I want to address. So that starts tomorrow. So if you guys can come and listen to that would be great. Until then, make sure you are creating happiness in your own life, whether that means you're going to look to that startup right there. It's rolling down there too. Startup Life podcast branding. If you're going to start that, or if that means right now you need a nap and you're just going to do that, that's great too. So until next time, thanks for being here. Ooh, where's my mouse? There it is. Bye.